Elena Cortez stood at the edge of her grandmother Sophia's property, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the overgrown garden. The old Victorian house loomed before her, its weathered blue paint peeling in places, the wraparound porch sagging slightly on the eastern side. A home she hadn't seen in 15 years, now suddenly hers. The lawyer's call had come 3 days ago, cutting through her carefully ordered life in Seattle. "Your grandmother has passed away," he'd said, his voice formal yet not unkind. "She's left everything to you." Everything. The house, the land, the antique store in town that had been in the family for generations. A life she had deliberately left behind, now calling her back with the persistence of a forgotten dream. Elena shifted her weight, the gravel crunching beneath her sensible flats. At 42, she had carved out a respectable existence as a corporate archivist, her days filled with cataloging other people's histories while carefully avoiding her own. No husband, no children. A small circle of friends who knew little about her past. A tidy apartment with minimalist furniture and walls painted in neutral tones. Safe choices, all of them. "Are you just going to stand there all day?" The voice startled her. Elena turned to find an elderly man watching her from the neighboring property, his weathered hands resting on a wooden cane. "Mr. Abernathy?" she asked, recognition dawning slowly. His eyes narrowed, then widened. "Little Elena Cortez? Well, I'll be. Not so little anymore, are you?" His laugh was warm, genuine. "Your grandmother kept saying you'd come back someday." Stubborn woman never lost faith. Elena felt a pang of guilt. She had exchanged Christmas cards with Sophia, made occasional phone calls on birthdays and holidays, but had never returned to Maplewood after that terrible summer when she was 27. The summer that had changed everything. "I didn't know she was ill," Elena said quietly. "Heart gave out in her sleep," Mr. Abernathy replied. "Peaceful way to go if you ask me." Found her in her garden chair, looking like she was just taking a nap in the sunshine. Elena nodded, trying to imagine her grandmother's final moments. Had she been thinking of Elena? Had she been lonely? The questions tightened around her heart like a vice. "Well," Mr. Abernathy continued, "don't be a stranger. Martha would love to see you. She's still making those lemon squares you used to sneak off with." With a small wave, he ambled back toward his house, leaving Elena alone with her inheritance and the weight of 15 years of absence. Taking a deep breath, she retrieved her suitcase from the rental car and made her way up the winding path to the front door. The key felt foreign in her hand, though it was the original, the same one she had used as a child when she spent summers here with Sophia after her parents died. The door creaked open, releasing the scent of lavender, old books, and furniture polish. A fragrance so distinctly her grandmother's that Elena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, and stood motionless in the entryway. Everything was exactly as she remembered, yet somehow different. Smaller, perhaps. The grandfather clock still stood guard at the foot of the staircase, its pendulum swinging with hypnotic precision. The walls were still adorned with faded photographs and paintings of landscapes Sophia had collected over decades. Elena moved through the rooms like a ghost, trailing her fingers along the spines of books, the carved edges of tables, the smooth fabric of curtains. In the kitchen, a teacup sat in the sink, Sophia's favorite, with hand-painted violets around the rim. Elena picked it up carefully, imagining her grandmother's final tea, perhaps enjoyed while watching the birds at the feeder outside the window. She continued her exploration, climbing the creaking stairs to the second floor. Sophia's bedroom door was closed, and Elena hesitated before turning the brass knob. The room beyond was neat, the bed made with hospital corners, a book still on the nightstand. Elena approached it slowly, noting the title, The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. A bookmark protruded from somewhere near the middle. A story Sophia would never finish. On the dresser sat a silver-framed photograph that made Elena's breath catch. It showed herself at 27, her arm around Sophia, both of them laughing in front of the antique store, Cortez Collectibles. It had been taken just days before everything fell apart, before the truth had come crashing down around her, shattering the foundation of her identity. Elena set the photograph down and sank onto the edge of the bed, her composure finally breaking. The tears came quietly at first, then in heaving sobs that bent her forward. arms wrapped around her middle as if to hold herself together. She cried for Sophia, for all the years lost, for the girl in the photograph who had no idea how drastically her life was about to change. And somewhere in the midst of her grief, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell asleep atop her grandmother's quilt, still in her traveling clothes, as the sun dipped below the horizon outside. Elena woke disoriented, the unfamiliar room bathed in moonlight. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, or why her eyes felt swollen and tender. Then reality rushed back. Sophia was gone, and she was alone in her grandmother's house. Her house now. The grandfather clock downstairs chimed midnight as Elena made her way to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, avoiding her reflection in the mirror above the sink. After changing into pajamas, she returned to Sophia's room, unable to face the prospect of sleeping in her childhood bedroom just yet. As she settled back onto the bed, something hard pressed against her hip. Reaching beneath the quilt, her fingers closed around a small leather-bound book. She pulled it out, recognizing Sophia's journal. Her grandmother had always kept one, jotting down thoughts, recipes, bits of poetry, and observations about her day. Elena hesitated, feeling like an intruder, but curiosity won out. She opened to a random page from 2 years prior. Called Elena today. Always so formal, my granddaughter. Like she's afraid to let herself feel too much. When will she understand that running from pain only makes the journey longer? The truth is in the letter, waiting for when she's ready. I hope I'm still here to help her through it when she finally comes home. Elena frowned. The letter? What letter? She flipped through more pages, finding similar cryptic references scattered throughout. 30 years I've kept this secret. Sometimes I think I should have told her that summer. But she was already dealing with so much after Michael left. The letter explains everything. It has to be enough. Dreamed of Lucia last night. Still miss my sister after all these years. Would she approve of my decision? The burden of knowing weighs heavier as I get older. Elena deserves the truth, but timing matters with such revelations. With growing unease, Elena closed the journal and placed it on the nightstand. Whatever secret Sophia had been keeping, whatever letter she had written, would have to wait until morning. She was too exhausted to make sense of anything more tonight. But sleep proved elusive. Elena tossed and turned, her mind replaying fragments of memories from that last summer in Maplewood. Her whirlwind romance with Michael Davis, the local music teacher. Their engagement after just 3 months. The devastating discovery that he had been seeing someone else the entire time. And the subsequent revelation that had sent her fleeing from Maplewood, vowing never to return. It was nearly dawn when Elena finally drifted off, her dreams filled with echoes of conversations long past and shadows of people she had tried to forget. The morning arrived with unforgiving brightness, sunlight streaming through the curtains. Sophia had never believed in closing completely. How else will you know it's time to start living the day? She used to say. Elena rose stiffly, her body protesting both the unfamiliar bed and the emotional toll of the previous day. After a quick shower, she dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, then made her way downstairs to the kitchen. The refrigerator contained only the basics: milk on the verge of souring, half a block of cheese, some eggs, and various condiments. Sophia had clearly been shopping for one. Elena managed to cobble together a simple breakfast of toast and coffee, sitting at the small kitchen table where she had eaten countless meals as a child. As she ate, she mentally catalogued the tasks ahead, arranging the funeral, settling Sophia's affairs, deciding what to do with the house and store. The lawyer had mentioned that her grandmother's wishes were quite specific: a small service, cremation, ashes to be scattered in her beloved garden. At least that part would be straightforward. With breakfast finished, Elena began a more thorough exploration of the house, looking for any sign of the mysterious letter Sophia had mentioned in her journal. She searched the obvious places first: the desk in the study, the drawer of the bedside table, the small secretary in the living room where Sophia had kept important documents. Nothing. She moved on to less likely hiding spots: between books on shelves, inside decorative boxes, taped to the bottoms of drawers like in spy movies. Still nothing. By mid-afternoon, Elena's frustration had peaked. She stood in the center of the attic, hands on her hips, surrounded by boxes of Christmas decorations, old clothing, and childhood mementos she had forgotten existed. No letter. Nothing that seemed like a profound revelation waiting to be discovered. "What were you talking about, Sophia?" she muttered to the empty room. With a sigh, Elena decided to take a break. She needed to visit the lawyer anyway to discuss funeral arrangements and the transfer of property. Perhaps he knew something about this mysterious letter. As she headed downstairs, the doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the quiet house. Elena hesitated, not expecting visitors, then made her way to the front door. A woman stood on the porch, perhaps in her early 30s, with dark curly hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore faded jeans and a green sweater, and her expression was a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Can I help you?" Elena asked. "You must be Elena," the woman said, her voice soft but confident. "I'm Olivia Reeves. I worked with your grandmother at the antique store." She extended her hand. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Sophia was special to many of us." Elena shook her hand, noting the calluses that spoke of work more physical than simply running a cash register. "Thank you. I was just about to head into town to meet with the lawyer. Were you looking for something specific?" Olivia hesitated. "Actually, I came to give you these." She reached into her bag and pulled out a set of keys. "They're for the store. Sophia wanted to make sure you had them right away." She paused, then added, "She also asked me to show you around when you were ready. Said you might need some help figuring out what's what." Elena accepted the keys, feeling their weight in her palm. The brass one with the ornate top was instantly recognizable. The key to Cortez Collectibles, the same one Sophia had worn on a chain around her neck for as long as Elena could remember. "Thank you," Elena said, uncertain what else to add. She had no plans to keep the store, but explaining that to someone who had apparently been close to her grandmother seemed inappropriate in the moment. "I was also wondering." Olivia shifted her weight slightly. "Sophia and I were in the middle of organizing an estate sale acquisition when she passed. The clients are expecting us tomorrow. I could handle it alone, but I thought you might want to be involved, get a sense of the business before." She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. "Before you sell it off." Elena hesitated. Her plan had been to spend as little time in Maplewood as possible, arrange the funeral, liquidate the assets, return to Seattle and her orderly life. Getting involved with the antique business would only complicate things, create connections she didn't want. Yet something about Olivia's expression, a mixture of hope and quiet determination, reminded Elena of Sophia. And perhaps the store contained clues about the mysterious letter. "What time tomorrow?" Elena heard herself asking. Relief washed over Olivia's face. 10 o'clock. "I could pick you up? The Coleman estate is about 30 minutes outside of town. I have a rental car. I can meet you at the store." Olivia nodded. "Perfect. And Elena? Sophia talked about you all the time. She was so proud of you." With a small smile, she turned and walked back to her car, an older model Subaru parked at the curb. Elena closed the door, leaning against it for a moment. Pride was the last emotion she would have expected from Sophia, considering how things had ended between them. But then again, perhaps 15 years had softened the edges of those memories for her grandmother in ways they never had for Elena. She glanced at her watch, realizing she needed to leave for her appointment with the lawyer. Grabbing her purse and the rental car keys, Elena headed out, locking the door behind her. As she drove through the familiar streets of Maplewood, memories surfaced at every turn. The park where she had played as a child, the ice cream shop that still had the same striped awning, the community center where she had first met Michael. The law office of Harrison and Bell occupied the second floor of a brick building on Main Street, above what had once been a hardware store but now appeared to be a cafe called Brood Awakening. Elena climbed the narrow staircase, her footsteps echoing against the wooden steps. James Harrison was much as she remembered him, balding, bespectacled, with kind eyes that regarded her thoughtfully from behind wire-rimmed glasses. He rose from behind his desk as his assistant showed her in. "Miss Cortez, thank you for coming. Please accept my condolences on your grandmother's passing. Sophia was not just a client but a friend." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Elena sat, smoothing her pants nervously. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I understand my grandmother left some specific instructions regarding her funeral arrangements. Yes, indeed. He opened a file folder on his desk. As you might expect from Sophia, she was quite detailed. A small service, cremation, and her ashes to be scattered in her garden, specifically among the roses she cultivated from cuttings her mother brought from Spain. Elena nodded. Sophia had often told the story of those roses, how they connected her to a homeland she had left as a young bride. I'll make the arrangements with the local funeral home. They're actually already aware. Sophia pre-planned most of it. Harrison slid a business card across the desk. Margaret at Peaceful Pines is expecting your call to finalize the details. I see. Elena wasn't surprised. Sophia had always been organized, always planning ahead. And regarding the house and store? Both are yours, free and clear. The store has been doing quite well, actually. Sophia modernized the inventory management system a few years back and expanded into online sales. Olivia Reeves has been instrumental in that aspect of the business. I met Ms. Reeves briefly today, Elena said. She seemed devoted to the store. Harrison smiled. She and Sophia formed quite the partnership. Olivia has an eye for valuable pieces, particularly mid-century items that appeal to younger collectors. He cleared his throat. There is, however, one unusual condition in the will regarding the antique store. Elena then said. What kind of condition? Sophia stipulated that you must actively run Cortez Collectibles for a minimum of 3 months before you can sell it. She was quite explicit about this. You must be physically present in the store, learning the business, meeting with customers, the works. 3 months. Elena repeated incredulously. That's impossible. I have a job in Seattle and apartment commitments. I can't just disappear for 3 months. Harrison regarded her sympathetically. I understand it's inconvenient, but Sophia was adamant. If you choose not to fulfill this condition, the store, though not the house, will be donated to the Maplewood Historical Society. Elena leaned back in her chair, mind racing. She could afford to lose the value of the store. Her job at the archive paid well enough. But why would Sophia make such a demand? What possible purpose could it serve? Beyond disrupting Elena's carefully constructed life? And then a thought occurred to her. Mr. Harrison, did my grandmother ever mention a letter she'd written to me? Something important she wanted me to read after she was gone. The lawyer's expression remained neutral, but Elena caught a flicker of something, recognition, in his eyes before he adjusted his glasses. Sophia left many personal items for you, Ms. Cortez. I can't say I'm aware of any specific letter. He closed the folder on his desk. However, she did leave this. From his desk drawer, he withdrew a small wooden box, intricately carved with a pattern of intertwining vines and flowers. Elena recognized it immediately. A jewelry box that had belonged to her great-grandmother, one that Sophia had always kept on her dresser. She asked that this be given to you directly, Harrison said, sliding it across the desk. Elena took the box, feeling its familiar weight. She remembered being fascinated by it as a child, tracing the carved patterns with her fingertips, while Sophia watched indulgently. Did she say anything else? About why she wanted me to have it now? Only that you would understand when the time was right. Harrison smiled apologetically. Sophia could be rather enigmatic when she chose to be. An understatement if Elena had ever heard one. She placed the box in her purse, mind still churning over the 3-month condition. Is there any flexibility on the time frame for the store? Perhaps I could split my time, come down on weekends. I'm afraid not. The will is quite specific. 3 consecutive months of full-time management before any sale can be considered. He paused, then added gently, if I may offer a personal observation, Ms. Cortez? Sophia believed very strongly that you needed to come home, to reconnect with your roots here. The condition wasn't meant as a punishment, but as a gift. Elena bit back a retort. What did James Harrison know about her life, her reasons for staying away? Sophia had always had a flair for the dramatic, for grand gestures meant to teach lessons. This was clearly one final attempt to impose her will on Elena's carefully ordered existence. I'll need to think about it, she said finally, rising from her chair. Thank you for your time, Mr. Harrison. He stood as well, extending his hand. Of course. Take whatever time you need. And please, call me if you have any questions or concerns as you settle your grandmother's affairs. Elena shook his hand, then left the office, her mind a jumble of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Main Street. On impulse, she turned right instead of heading back to her car, walking the 2 blocks to Cortez Collectibles. The storefront looked much as it always had. Large display windows showcasing an eclectic mix of furniture, artwork, and smaller collectibles. The sign above the door had been repainted, the gold lettering fresh against the deep blue background. Through the window, Elena could see that the interior had been modernized somewhat. Better lighting, a sleek computer system at the checkout counter. But the essence remained the same. Using the key Olivia had given her, Elena unlocked the door. A small bell jingled overhead as she stepped inside, and the familiar scent of furniture polish, old books, and the faint mustiness that clung to vintage items enveloped her. For a moment, she was transported back to childhood summers spent exploring the store's treasures while Sophia chatted with customers. She moved through the space slowly, noting the careful arrangement of items, the price tags written in an unfamiliar hand, Olivia's presumably. At the back of the store, a door led to Sophia's office. Elena hesitated, then turned the knob, finding it unlocked. The office was small but efficient, with a desk facing the door and shelves lining the walls. Unlike the rest of the store, which showed signs of Olivia's influence, this space remained purely Sophia's domain. Family photographs adorned the walls, including several of Elena that she didn't remember sending. College graduation, receiving an award at a professional conference, even a candid shot of her walking through Pike Place Market in Seattle. Sophia had been keeping tabs on her apparently. The realization sent an uncomfortable shiver down Elena's spine. The desk was neat, with files arranged in a tray, and a computer that looked surprisingly modern for someone of Sophia's generation. Elena sat in the chair, running her fingers along the worn edge of the desk blotter. Opening drawers revealed nothing unusual: office supplies, business cards, receipts. She was about to give up when she noticed a key taped to the underside of the center drawer. Small and silver, it didn't match any of the locks in the office. Elena pocketed it, unsure of its purpose but unwilling to leave it behind. As she prepared to leave, her gaze fell on a framed photograph she hadn't noticed before, partly hidden behind a stack of books on a shelf. She picked it up, dust clouding the glass. The image showed Sophia, much younger, perhaps in her 30s, standing beside another woman who looked strikingly similar. They had their arms around each other, both laughing at something beyond the camera's view. Elena turned the frame over, finding an inscription on the back. Sophia and Lucia, Marbella, 1962. Lucia, the sister Sophia had mentioned in her journal. Elena hadn't known much about her great-aunt growing up. Sophia rarely spoke of her. All Elena knew was that Lucia had remained in Spain when Sophia married and moved to America, and that the sisters had maintained a correspondence until Lucia's death sometime in the 1980s. Elena replaced the photograph and continued her exploration. Nothing else in the office provided any clues about the mysterious letter Sophia had written. Frustrated, she decided to head back to the house. Perhaps the wooden box Harrison had given her contained answers. The evening had turned cool by the time Elena returned to Sophia's, her house. She fixed herself a simple dinner from the meager offerings in the pantry, making a mental note to go grocery shopping the next day. After eating, she settled in the living room with the carved wooden box on her lap. The box opened with a small creak, revealing its velvet-lined interior. Inside lay Sophia's most treasured jewelry, the pearl earrings Elena's grandfather had given her on their wedding day, a cameo brooch passed down from her mother, an ornate silver bracelet from Spain. Beneath these familiar pieces was a small velvet pouch. Elena opened it, tipping the contents into her palm. A ring emerged, a simple gold band with a modest diamond flanked by 2 smaller sapphires. She recognized it immediately. It was her mother's engagement ring, the one Sophia had kept after Elena's parents died in the car accident when she was just 7 years old. But there was no letter, no explanation for why Sophia had wanted her to have the box now. Disappointed, Elena was about to close the box when she noticed that the velvet lining of the lid seemed loose in one corner. Curious, she tugged at it gently, and it lifted away, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a faded envelope addressed simply, "For Elena, when the time is right." Her heart hammering, Elena carefully extracted the envelope. The paper felt thin and fragile, yellowed with age. This wasn't a recent letter, something Sophia had written in her final years. This had been hidden away for decades. With trembling fingers, Elena opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you have finally come home to Maplewood. I hope you can forgive an old woman for the manipulation, but I knew no other way to ensure you would stay long enough to learn the truth. What I am about to tell you should have been shared years ago, but fear and love, sometimes indistinguishable from each other, kept me silent. It concerns your mother, my daughter Isabella, and the truth of your birth. Isabella was 18 when she met your father, Robert Cortez. They fell deeply in love, married quickly, and seemed blissfully happy. But there were complications in their marriage that few knew about. After years of trying, the doctors confirmed that Isabella could not bear children. The news devastated them both. They considered adoption, but were consistently passed over by agencies for reasons never made clear to them. And then, in the winter of 1981, my sister Lucia wrote from Spain with an extraordinary proposal. Lucia's daughter Carmen found herself unmarried and pregnant at 19. In our small Spanish village, this would have brought shame to the family. Lucia asked if Isabella and Robert would consider adopting the baby, her grandchild, my grandniece, and raising it as their own. They agreed immediately. Robert had distant cousins in Spain, so a story was crafted. Isabella and Robert would travel to Spain for an extended visit and return with their child, born while abroad. The paperwork was arranged through connections Robert had in both countries. You were given the name Elena Cortez, and no one questioned your parentage. You were 5 when Lucia sent word that Carmen had died, a sudden illness that took her in a matter of weeks. Carmen never married, never had other children. She did, however, write letters to me over the years, asking about your well-being. I kept photographs of you in an album that I would share with her through Lucia. When your parents died in the accident, it seemed pointless and potentially harmful to tell a grieving 7-year-old child that the parents she had lost were not biologically hers. As the years passed, the right moment never presented itself. Then came that summer 15 years ago, when Michael betrayed you, when you discovered the truth about his engagement to another woman. You came to me broken-hearted. You told me you felt as though your entire life had been a lie. I nearly told you then about Carmen, about your true origins, but you were in so much pain already. I couldn't bear to add to your burden. And then you left, cutting ties with Maplewood, and to a large extent with me. Perhaps I was a coward not to send this letter sooner, but I always hoped you would return on your own, that we could have this conversation face to face. I want you to know that Isabella and Robert loved you fiercely, completely. You were their miracle, the child they had longed for. The circumstances of your birth do not diminish that love in any way. In the bottom drawer of my desk at home, locked in the small fireproof box, the key for which should be with this letter, you will find everything I have kept: Carmen's letters, photographs of her, the original birth certificate from Spain, and a journal Lucia sent after Carmen's death. I believe you deserve to know your full history, to understand all the threads that have woven together to create your life. My darling girl, I hope this truth brings you not pain but a wider sense of belonging. You are loved. You have always been loved. By Isabella and Robert. By me. And from a distance, by a young woman named Carmen, who made the most difficult choice a mother can make, in hopes of giving her child a better life. With all my love, Sophia. May 10, 1997. Elena stared at the date. 28 years. Sophia had kept this letter hidden for 28 years, waiting for the right time, that never seemed to come. The room spun around her. She was not who she had thought she was. Not entirely a Cortez. Not the person she had believed herself to be for 42 years. Carmen. She had a biological mother named Carmen, a young woman from Spain who had given her up, who had died when Elena was only 5. A woman she had no memory of, no connection to beyond biology. And Sophia had kept this from her. Through childhood, through adolescence, through the turmoil of that summer 15 years ago, when Elena's world had already been shattering. Anger flared hot and bright. How dare Sophia decide when and how Elena should learn about her own life? What right did she have to withhold such fundamental information? But as quickly as it came, the anger dissolved into confusion and a strange, hollow ache. What difference did it really make now? Isabella and Robert Cortez, the only parents she had ever known, had been dead for 35 years. Carmen was gone. Even Sophia was now beyond reach, beyond questioning. Elena reread the letter, trying to absorb its implications. The small silver key she had found taped under the desk drawer. That must be for the fireproof box Sophia mentioned. Tomorrow she would look for it, would face whatever additional revelations it contained. But tonight, she felt too fragile, too unmoored from the identity she had carried for so long. Setting the letter aside, Elena curled up on the sofa, pulling an afghan over herself. She didn't have the energy to climb the stairs to a proper bed. Sleep eluded her for hours as her mind tumbled through memories, reinterpreting them through this new lens. Had there been clues she'd missed? Had Sophia ever almost revealed the truth? And what of her supposed Spanish relatives on her father's side? Had they been complicit in the deception, or simply convenient cover for the story? When sleep finally claimed her, Elena dreamed of Spain, a country she had never visited, of sun-drenched villages and a young woman with her eyes and smile, cradling an infant wrapped in a blue blanket, tears streaming down her face as she handed the baby to someone Elena couldn't quite see. Morning arrived with the insistent chirping of birds outside the window, and the distant sound of a lawnmower. Elena opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling above her. The events of the previous day came rushing back. Sophia's house, the antique store, the lawyer's revelation about the 3-month condition, and most significantly, the letter. She sat up slowly, her neck stiff from a night spent on the sofa. The letter lay on the coffee table where she had left it, innocent-looking despite the bombshell it contained. Elena picked it up, rereading it in the clear light of morning. The words hadn't changed, but somehow they felt less shocking, as if her sleeping mind had begun the process of integration. After a quick shower and change of clothes, Elena made her way to Sophia's home office, a small room off the kitchen that had once been a pantry. The desk was old but sturdy, crafted from oak with dovetail joints and brass handles on the drawers. Elena knelt before it, opening the bottom drawer. As Sophia had written, a small fireproof box sat inside, its surface cool to the touch. The silver key slid into the lock and turned with a satisfying click. Elena lifted the lid, revealing a neatly organized collection of documents. On top was a manila envelope labeled Elena, Birth Records. Beneath it lay a stack of letters tied with faded blue ribbon, a small photo album, and a leather-bound journal. Elena began with the birth records. Inside the envelope was a birth certificate from a hospital in Marbella, Spain, listing her date of birth and her mother's name, Carmen Lucia Vega. No father was listed. Attached to it was a second birth certificate, this one issued in the United States, naming Isabella and Robert Cortez as her parents. Various legal documents followed, adoption papers, immigration forms, all creating the paper trail of her fictitious entry into the Cortez family. Next, she untied the ribbon around the letters. There were dozens, spanning from 1981 to 1986, all addressed to Sophia from Carmen. Elena hesitated, then selected one at random from 1983. Dear Tia Sophia, thank you for the photographs of Elena. She is growing so beautifully, her smile like sunshine. In the picture of her on the swing, I can see my mother's eyes, my father's chin. It is strange to see pieces of my family reflected in a child an ocean away. I dream sometimes that I am there with her, teaching her to make paella or to dance flamenco as my mother taught me. In these dreams she knows who I am, and there is no shame or confusion, only love between us. When I wake, the reality is harder to bear, but I remind myself of the life she has with Isabella and Robert, stable, secure, filled with opportunities one could never have provided. My studies are going well. The nursing program is challenging but fulfilling. I think perhaps I have found my calling in caring for others, since I cannot care for the one who matters most. Please continue to send photographs when you can. They are my most treasured possessions. With love and gratitude, Carmen. Elena set the letter down, her vision blurring with tears. Carmen hadn't been some reckless teenager who had cast her child aside at the first opportunity. She had been a young woman who had made an impossible choice, who had followed Elena's life from afar, who had carried the weight of that decision with her always. The photo album revealed a young woman with Elena's dark eyes and the same slight wave to her hair. Carmen in her nursing uniform, Carmen at what appeared to be a family gathering, Carmen standing alone on a beach, her expression pensive as she gazed at the horizon. The last few photos showed her noticeably thinner, pale but smiling bravely for the camera. The final image was of a simple grave marker. Carmen Lucia Vega, 1962 to 1986. She had been only 24 when she died. 7 years younger than Elena was now. The journal was written in Spanish, a language Elena had studied in high school and college, but had never fully mastered. She could make out enough to understand that it was Carmen's personal diary, begun when she learned she was pregnant, and continued until shortly before her death. Sophia had included a handwritten note explaining that Lucia had sent it after Carmen's passing, believing Elena should have it someday. Elena closed the box, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she had discovered. She needed air, space to process the shifting landscape of her identity. Grabbing her purse and keys, she left the house, driving without a clear destination in mind. She found herself at the town cemetery, where her parents, Isabella and Robert, were buried. Their shared headstone was simple: together in life, together in eternity. Elena knelt beside it, tracing the engraved letters with her fingertips. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" she whispered. "Or was this secret supposed to die with you?" Only the whisper of wind through nearby pine trees answered her. Elena sat back on her heels, trying to reconcile the parents she had known, loving, honest, principled, with this decades-long deception. But even as the question formed in her mind, Elena knew the answer. They had planned to tell her, perhaps when she was older, when she could understand the complexities of love and sacrifice that had brought her into their lives. The accident had robbed them of that chance, leaving Sophia to bear the burden alone. "They loved you," she could almost hear Sophia saying. "That was never a lie." As Elena rose to leave, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Olivia. "Still on for the Coleman estate today? Meeting at the store at 10. Elena checked her watch, 9:15. She had completely forgotten their arrangement. "Be there," she texted back, hurrying to her car. Olivia was waiting outside Cortez Collectibles when Elena arrived, a thermos in one hand and a tablet in the other. Her curls were corralled beneath a colorful scarf, and she wore the same practical jeans as yesterday, paired with a vintage denim jacket. "Morning," she said, offering a smile that acknowledged but didn't intrude upon Elena's evident distress. "Coffee?" Sophia always said no antique hunting should begin without proper caffeine. Elena accepted the thermos cap filled with rich dark coffee. "Thanks. Sorry if I'm a bit distracted today." "No explanation needed," Olivia replied, unlocking the passenger door of her Subaru. Learning to navigate Sophia's absence would be enough without the business aspects to consider. As they drove through town and into the countryside beyond, Olivia filled the silence with information about the Coleman estate, an elderly couple who had decided to downsize after 60 years in the same farmhouse, their children having cherry-picked family heirlooms, but leaving much of value behind. Sophia was particularly interested in their collection of depression glass and some arts and crafts furniture pieces, Olivia explained. "Mrs. Coleman has a secretary desk that's probably stickly." Elena nodded, making appropriate noises of interest, while her mind continued to process the revelations of the morning. The landscape outside the window blurred into an impressionistic painting of spring greens and browns. "She talked about you constantly. You know," Olivia said after a period of companionable silence. "Always my Elena is so accomplished, or my Elena would know about this historical period." Elena turned from the window, surprised. "Really? Even after? After you left?" Olivia finished gently. "Especially then. She kept track of everything. That award you won for digital archiving methods, the paper you published on preserving ephemera, your promotion to head archivist. How did she even know about those things? Olivia shrugged. Sophia had her ways. She was surprisingly tech-savvy for someone her age. Found your professional profile online. Followed your workplace's social media. She was incredibly proud of you. The words settled uncomfortably in Elena's chest. Pride was the last thing she had expected from Sophia, considering how they had parted. We didn't exactly leave things on good terms, Elena said, staring at the coffee in her hands. That summer, 15 years ago, I said some unforgivable things. Olivia navigated a sharp turn before responding. Sophia never mentioned specifics, just that you'd been hurt and needed space. She respected that, even though it broke her heart. The farmhouse appeared ahead, a two-story white clapboard structure with a wraparound porch and a red barn visible behind it. As they parked in the gravel driveway, Elena found herself grateful for the interruption of difficult memories. Mrs. Coleman greeted them at the door. A tiny woman with snow-white hair and bright, intelligent eyes behind cat-eye glasses. You must be Sophia's granddaughter, she said, taking Elena's hand in both of hers. I was so sorry to hear of her passing. She was a remarkable woman, and quite the negotiator when it came to antiques. Her eyes twinkled. I was looking forward to our usual haggling session. I'm afraid I'm not much of a negotiator, Elena admitted. Nonsense. It's in your blood. Mrs. Coleman turned to lead them inside. Now, Sophia had already made preliminary selections from photographs I sent. I've had those pieces moved to the dining room for your inspection. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Olivia moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency, examining furniture joints, checking manufacturers' marks on dishware, photographing potential acquisitions. Elena found herself following along, increasingly drawn into the process despite herself. Her archival training proved unexpectedly useful. She identified a collection of Civil War-era letters tucked in the secretary desk, recognized the value of some theatrical playbills from the 1920s, and spotted a first-edition Hemingway on a crowded bookshelf. By early afternoon, they had compiled a substantial list of items for the store, and Olivia had negotiated a fair price that seemed to satisfy Mrs. Coleman. We'll send movers tomorrow if that works for you, Olivia said as they prepared to leave. Everything will be handled with care. Perfect, Mrs. Coleman replied, then turned to Elena. Your grandmother would be pleased to see you following in her footsteps, dear. The comment, meant kindly, sent a ripple of unease through Elena. Was that what she was doing? Following in Sophia's footsteps? Just yesterday, her plan had been clear. Arrange the funeral, sell the house and store, return to Seattle. Now, after less than 48 hours in Maplewood, those certainties were blurring around the edges. The drive back to town was quieter, both women lost in thought. As they pulled up in front of Cortez Collectibles, Olivia turned to Elena. I know you probably have plans to sell the store, she said, her voice carefully neutral. But if you decide to keep it running for those 3 months Mr. Harrison mentioned, I'd be happy to continue working here. Sophia and I had a good system going. Elena studied the younger woman, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. Did Sophia tell you about the condition in her will? Olivia's slight hesitation was answer enough. She mentioned she was making some arrangements to ensure you'd spend time in Maplewood. I didn't know the specifics. Did she tell you why? Why it was so important to her that I come back? Again, that careful hesitation. She believed you had unfinished business here, that you needed to make peace with the past before you could fully embrace your future. Olivia met Elena's gaze directly. Sophia worried about you living so isolated in Seattle. She thought Maplewood had healing properties you needed. Elena shook her head, a spark of the old anger flaring. She had no right to orchestrate my life like this, to force me back to a place I deliberately left behind. No, she didn't, Olivia agreed, surprising Elena with her candor. Sophia had many wonderful qualities, but respecting boundaries wasn't always one of them. She believed so fiercely in doing what she thought was best for the people she loved that she sometimes overstepped. She smiled faintly, but she usually turned out to be right, which made it both better and worse. The observation was so accurate that Elena couldn't help smiling too. That sounds like Sophia. Look, Olivia continued. Whatever you decide about the store, I'm here to help. And if you want to talk about Sophia or anything else, I'm a good listener." There was something about Olivia's straightforward kindness that disarmed Elena's usual guardedness. "Actually, I could use some help with funeral arrangements. Sophia apparently pre-planned most of it, but I need to finalize details with Peaceful Pines." "I'd be happy to go with you," Olivia offered. "I've known Margaret, the director, since high school." "Thank you. That would be helpful." They agreed to meet the following morning, and Elena returned to Sophia's house feeling marginally steadier than when she had left. The day's activities had provided a welcome distraction from the revelation about her birth, giving her emotional whirlwind a chance to settle into something she could begin to process. The house was quiet as she entered, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the living room. Elena made her way to the kitchen, suddenly aware of how hungry she was after the busy day. The refrigerator's barren shelves reminded her she had intended to go grocery shopping. As she closed the refrigerator door, her gaze fell on a framed photograph she hadn't noticed before, hanging on the adjacent wall. It showed Sophia standing in front of Cortez Collectibles with a much younger Olivia, both grinning broadly and holding a grand reopening banner. Elena peered at the date printed in the corner. 7 years ago, around the time Sophia had apparently modernized the store. Something about the image nagged at Elena, the way Sophia stood with her arm around Olivia, the proud tilt of her chin, the unmistakable affection in her expression. It reminded Elena of photographs from her own childhood, of Sophia with her. The same protective embrace, the same pride. The realization hit her with unexpected force. Olivia had become a surrogate granddaughter to Sophia in Elena's absence. Not a replacement. Sophia's continued tracking of Elena's accomplishments proved that, but someone nearby who could receive the love and mentorship Sophia had so desperately wanted to give Elena. Instead of jealousy, Elena felt a profound gratitude. Sophia hadn't been alone these past 15 years. She had found someone who appreciated her wisdom, her stories, her passion for antiques. Someone who had clearly cared deeply for her. Elena ordered takeout from a local diner that Sophia had frequented, then spent the evening going through more of Carmen's letters. Each one revealed a young woman of intelligence and sensitivity, struggling with her decision but never doubting it had been the right one for her child. In her last letter, dated just weeks before her death, Carmen had written, "Dear Tia Sophia, the doctors say the treatments are not working as hoped. I have made my peace with what is coming. My only regret is that I will never see Elena grow into the woman she will become. Please, when the time is right, tell her about me. Not because I deserve a place in her memory, but because every person should know the full truth of their beginnings. I have enclosed a small gift for her, a medallion of Saint Elena that belonged to my grandmother. In our family legend, it brings clarity to those who wear it. I hope someday it might help her understand the choice I made. Tell her I loved her with every breath, from the moment I knew of her existence until my last moment on this earth. Tell her that giving her to Isabella and Robert was both the hardest and the most loving thing I have ever done. And tell her that wherever I am watching over her with pride and joy. With eternal gratitude for your kindness, Carmen." Elena searched through the box but found no medallion. Had Sophia kept it elsewhere? Or had she perhaps never intended to fulfill Carmen's request, to tell Elena the truth of her birth? These questions followed Elena into sleep, mingling with dreams of Spain and Carmen, and a medallion that remained just out of reach. The next few days passed in a blur of practical arrangements. With Olivia's help, Elena finalized Sophia's funeral service, scheduled for Saturday. They visited the store daily, receiving and processing the items purchased from the Coleman estate. Without quite making a conscious decision to do so, Elena found herself learning the operations of Cortez Collectibles, the inventory system, the pricing strategies, the regular customers who stopped by as much for conversation as for antiquing. On Friday afternoon, Elena was alone in the store, Olivia having left to help a customer with a delivery, when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up from the computer where she had been entering inventory data to see an elderly man enter, leaning heavily on a carved wooden cane. "Can I help you?" she asked, rising from behind the counter. The man removed his hat, revealing a full head of white hair. Well, well. If it isn't little Elena Cortez, all grown up. Something about his voice triggered a memory. "Dr. Reynolds?" He beamed. "You remember me. It's been, what, 20 years? At least, Elena agreed, coming around the counter to greet him properly. Dr. Michael Reynolds had been Sophia's physician for as long as Elena could remember, and had treated Elena herself for childhood ailments during her summers in Maplewood. "I was so sorry to hear about Sophia," he said, his expression sobering. "She was a remarkable woman. One of my favorite patients, always questioning my recommendations, doing her own research." Elena smiled. "That sounds like Sophia. I actually stopped by to give you something," Dr. Reynolds continued, reaching into his pocket. "Sophia left this with me about a year ago, asked me to give it to you personally if anything happened to her. Said you might come looking for it." He extended his hand, and in his palm lay a silver medallion on a delicate chain. Elena's breath caught as she took it, turning it over to reveal the image of a crowned woman holding a cross, Saint Elena. "She mentioned it was a family heirloom," Dr. Reynolds added. "Something about it coming from Spain?" Elena nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in her throat. Carmen's medallion, the one she had sent for her daughter, the physical connection to a mother she had never known. "Thank you," she managed finally. "This means more than I can say." Dr. Reynolds patted her shoulder gently. "Sophia wanted to make sure you got it. Said you might need its special properties." "Special properties?" "Something about bringing clarity." He smiled. "Sophia had a flair for the dramatic, as you know, but she was quite serious about this particular item finding its way to you." After Dr. Reynolds left, Elena stood holding the medallion, its silver surface warming in her palm. Carmen had sent it for her decades ago, and Sophia had kept it all this time, waiting for the right moment that never came. Then, in her final year, she had entrusted it to Dr. Reynolds, ensuring Elena would receive it regardless. Had Sophia planned to tell her the truth all along? Had she been waiting for Elena to return to Maplewood voluntarily, to create the right circumstances for such a momentous revelation? The medallion seemed to pulse with unanswered questions. Elena slipped the chain over her head, feeling the weight of it settle against her heart. Whatever clarity it was supposed to bring hadn't materialized yet, but the physical connection to Carmen, a woman who had loved her enough to let her go, provided a strange comfort. Saturday dawned clear and mild, perfect weather for the garden service Sophia had requested. Elena dressed carefully in a simple black dress that Sophia had always admired, and pinned up her hair the way her grandmother had preferred it. "To show off your magnificent cheekbones," Sophia used to say. The medallion remained around her neck, hidden beneath her clothing, but a constant presence against her skin. Elena was still adjusting to the idea of Carmen, still processing the implications of her true origins, but she found she wanted this tangible connection during Sophia's funeral. The service was small but well attended. Maplewood residents came to pay their respects to a woman who had been a fixture in their community for over 60 years. Elena recognized many faces from childhood. Mrs. Peterson, who had taught her piano, Mr. Lopez, who ran the hardware store, the Abernathy's from next door with their lemon squares. What surprised her was how many younger people attended as well. Former classmates, yes, but also people Elena didn't know who clearly had meaningful connections to Sophia. Her grandmother had continued to build relationships, to touch lives, long after Elena had cut herself off from Maplewood. Olivia stood quietly at Elena's side throughout the service, a steady presence as various individuals shared memories of Sophia. When it came time for Elena to speak, she found herself uncharacteristically hesitant. What could she say about a woman she had deliberately distanced herself from for 15 years? A woman who had kept such significant secrets? Sophia Cortez was complicated, she began finally, her voice stronger than she felt. She believed fiercely in doing what she thought was right, even when others might disagree. She loved deeply, sometimes in ways that were hard to recognize. And she believed in the power of objects, the antiques she collected and sold, to connect us to our past, to tell the stories we sometimes can't put into words ourselves. Elena touched the spot where the medallion lay beneath her dress. "In these past few days, I've discovered that Sophia had stories she never told me, truths she held back. But I've also rediscovered how much she loved this community, this town, and the people in it. Maplewood was her heart's home, and she built a life here rich with connections and meaning." She paused, looking out at the gathered faces. Sophia would be touched that so many of you have come today. She would want you to remember her not with sadness, but with stories, preferably told over strong coffee, and those almond cookies she was famous for. A ripple of appreciative laughter moved through the crowd. Elena concluded with a simple, "Thank you for loving her," and returned to her seat, feeling as though she had somehow passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. After the service, as people began to disperse, a tall man with salt and pepper hair approached Elena. Something about his bearing seemed familiar, though she couldn't immediately place him. "Miss Cortez," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Richard Davis. I wanted to offer my condolences on your grandmother's passing." The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Davis, Michael's father. The memories flooded back. Meeting Michael at a community concert, their whirlwind romance, the shocking discovery of his simultaneous engagement to a woman in the neighboring town, the humiliation, the pain, the desperate need to escape Maplewood, and everything it represented. "Mr. Davis," she acknowledged stiffly. "Thank you for coming." "Sophia was a remarkable woman," he continued. "She and I had our differences over the years, especially after what happened with Michael. But we found our way to a kind of peace eventually." Elena hadn't known they had any relationship at all after that summer. "That's good to hear." Richard glanced around, then lowered his voice. "I don't know if you're aware, but Michael returned to Maplewood about 5 years ago, after his divorce. He's teaching music at the high school now." The information ricocheted through Elena like a bullet. Michael back in Maplewood, divorced, teaching just blocks from Cortez Collectibles. "I see," she managed. "He's changed a great deal," Richard continued. "What he did to you, it's his greatest regret. He tried to contact you a few times over the years to apologize, but your grandmother said you weren't ready to hear from him." Elena's head spun. Sophia had been in contact with Michael? Had acted as some kind of gatekeeper between them? "I should go," she said abruptly. "Thank you again for coming." She turned away, searching for Olivia in the dispersing crowd. Instead, her gaze fell on a man standing apart from the others, watching her intently. Taller than she remembered, with more lines around his eyes and gray threading through his once dark hair, but unmistakably Michael Davis. Their eyes met across the garden, and time seemed to compress. For an instant, Elena was 27 again, discovering that the man she had planned to marry had been living a double life. The pain of that betrayal, fresh as yesterday, surged through her. Then Olivia appeared at her side, gently touching her arm. "Elena? Are you okay? You've gone pale." The moment broke. Elena turned away from Michael's gaze. "I'm fine. Just tired. It's been an emotional day." "Of course. Let's get you home." As they walked toward the car, Elena could feel Michael's eyes following her, but she didn't look back. Whatever closure or conversation he might want would have to wait. Today was about Sophia, about laying to rest a woman who had kept secrets out of love and fear, who had tried in her way to protect Elena from further pain. Back at Sophia's house, her house now, Elena changed out of her funeral clothes into jeans and a comfortable sweater. The reception that followed the service had been held at the community center, allowing Elena to avoid any further unexpected encounters. Now, curled on the sofa with a glass of wine, she fingered the medallion around her neck. Saint Elena, bringer of clarity. So far, clarity remained elusive, replaced instead by a growing list of complications: her true birth origins, Sophia's manipulations, Michael's return to Maplewood. "What am I supposed to do with all this, Sophia?" Elena murmured to the empty room. "What did you want me to learn from coming back here?" The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Expecting Olivia or perhaps one of the neighbors with a casserole, Maplewood still adhered to such traditions after funerals. Elena opened the door without checking first. Michael Davis stood on the porch, hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket, looking simultaneously older and exactly as she remembered him. "Elena," he said, his voice achingly familiar. "I'm sorry to intrude. I wanted to offer my condolences. Sophia meant a lot to me despite everything." Elena gripped the doorframe, fighting the urge to slam the door in his face. "Thank you," she said stiffly, "but this isn't a good time." He nodded, accepting the rebuff. I understand. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. Not a day goes by that I don't regret the pain I caused you. The words, probably rehearsed countless times over 15 years, fell flat against the wall Elena had built around that particular wound. Is that supposed to make me feel better?
No.
Nothing could make up for what I did. He took a step back. I'll go. But if you're staying in Maplewood for a while, maybe we could talk sometime. Clear the air. Elena almost laughed at his choice of words. Clear the air. As if 15 years of silence could be dispersed like cigarette smoke with a simple conversation. I don't know how long I'll be here, she said, which wasn't quite a refusal. Fair enough. Michael turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Sophia forgave me eventually. Said holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She was pretty wise, your grandmother. With that, he walked away, leaving Elena standing in the doorway with conflicting emotions churning inside her. She closed the door slowly, leaning against it as she tried to process this latest development. Sophia had forgiven Michael, had maintained some kind of relationship with him after he returned to Maplewood, had possibly even arranged for this encounter by telling him about the funeral. The realization that Sophia had continued to orchestrate Elena's life even from beyond the grave was both infuriating and somehow comical. Elena found herself laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that echoed in the empty house. You're unbelievable, Sophia, she said aloud. Absolutely unbelievable. But as her laughter subsided, a strange calm settled over her. Sophia had been meddling, yes, but perhaps with reason. She had believed Elena needed to confront the past, all of it, to move forward. The revelation about Carmen, the return to Maplewood, the encounter with Michael. They were all pieces of a puzzle Sophia had arranged for Elena to solve. The medallion felt warm against her skin, as if responding to this realization. Elena took it out, examining the image of Saint Elena in the fading light. Clarity Carmen had said it would bring. Perhaps not immediate clarity, but the beginning of a path toward understanding. For the first time since arriving in Maplewood, Elena felt something shift within her. A loosening of the tight control she had maintained over her emotions, her connections, her life. She had built walls to protect herself after that devastating summer 15 years ago, had retreated into the orderly, predictable world of archiving where the past was something to be catalogued and contained, not experienced. But the past refused to stay contained. It lived in Sophia's house, in the antique store, in the streets of Maplewood, in Michael's apology, in Carmen's letters. It lived in Elena herself, in the DNA she had inherited from a young Spanish woman she had never known, in the values instilled by the parents who had chosen her, in the independence forged through loss and betrayal. Elena tucked the medallion back beneath her sweater and went to the kitchen to make tea, Sophia's ritual when confronting difficult decisions. As the kettle boiled, she found herself thinking not about returning to Seattle, but about the 3 months Sophia had demanded she spend running Cortez Collectibles. 3 months to explore her newly discovered origins. 3 months to understand Sophia's world, to see Maplewood through adult eyes unblind by pain and betrayal. 3 months to decide what parts of her past she wanted to carry forward into her future. Perhaps Sophia's final manipulation wasn't a punishment after all, but a gift, the gift of time and space to reassemble the fragments of her identity into something new, something whole. The kettle whistled and Elena reached for Sophia's favorite teacup, the one with hand-painted violets around the rim. As she poured the steaming water over the tea leaves, she made her decision. She would stay for the 3 months. She would run Cortez Collectibles, learning its rhythms and secrets. She would read Carmen's journal, painful as it might be, to understand the woman who had given her life. She would face Michael and the unresolved feelings his betrayal had fostered. And maybe, just maybe, she would discover that coming home wasn't a step backward, but a necessary detour on the journey forward. The space between echoes, that brief pause between sound and its return, was where truth resided. Sophia had known that. Now it was Elena's turn to listen. The days following Sophia's funeral settled into an unexpected rhythm. Each morning, Elena woke early, made coffee in Sophia's percolator, and spent an hour with Carmen's journal, slowly working her way through the Spanish text with the help of an online translator. By 9:30, she was at Cortez Collectibles, working alongside Olivia to sort inventory, assist customers, and learn the intricacies of the antique business. These activities, ordinary, mundane, somehow anchored her as she navigated the emotional complexities of her situation. The store provided structure, while Carmen's journal offered glimpses into a young woman's heart and mind, her dreams, her struggles, her unwavering love for the child she had given away. "You've got a good eye," Olivia commented one afternoon as they unpacked a collection of vintage Bakelite jewelry acquired from an estate in the neighboring county. "The way you immediately spotted that unmarked piece as Schiaparelli. Sophia would be impressed." Elena turned the brooch over in her hands, a surrealist design of a bird with ruby eyes. "I spent a lot of time in this store as a child. I guess some knowledge seeped in through osmosis." "It's more than that," Olivia insisted. "It's intuition. Sophia always said the best antiquers have an instinct for an object's story, its provenance, even without documentation." The observation struck Elena as peculiarly apt, given her current preoccupation with her own undocumented origins. She had been reading about DNA testing services, considering whether such scientific validation of her heritage was something she wanted or needed. "Did Sophia ever mention my birth mother to you?" Elena asked suddenly. "A woman named Carmen from Spain?" Olivia's hands stilled over the jewelry she was cataloging. She looked up, eyes widening slightly. "Is that what was in the letter? Your true birth story?" Elena nodded. "Sophia kept it from me my entire life. I only found out after she died." "Oh, Elena." Olivia's expression was a mixture of sympathy and discomfort. "She never told me specifically, but there were hints. Comments about your Spanish blood being the source of your stubbornness. Once, when she'd had a bit too much sherry, she mentioned regretting a promise she'd made to keep a secret until the time was right." "Did she ever indicate when that right time might be?" Olivia shook her head. "No, but she kept a photograph in her wallet. A young woman with your eyes. When I asked about it once, she just said it was a relative from the old country." Carmen. Sophia had carried her image all these years, a silent acknowledgement of the woman who had entrusted her child to the Cortez family. "I'm still trying to process it all," Elena admitted. "Finding out at 42 that your entire identity is not exactly what you thought." "Is it though?" Olivia asked gently. "Different circumstances of birth, yes. But you're still Elena Cortez, raised by Robert and Isabella, Sophia's granddaughter. That hasn't changed." The simple observation brought unexpected tears to Elena's eyes. "Thank you for that," she said quietly. "It helps to have someone else's perspective." "Anytime." Olivia returned to the Bakelite collection, giving Elena space to compose herself. After a moment, she added, "Speaking of perspectives, I noticed Michael Davis at the funeral. Did he approach you?" Elena tensed. "Briefly. And he came by the house afterward." "Ah." Olivia's tone was carefully neutral. "And how was that?" "Excruciating. Apparently, he and Sophia had some kind of relationship after he returned to Maplewood. She forgave him for what he did to me." "Does that bother you? That she forgave him?" Elena considered the question. "I'm not sure. Part of me thinks she had no right. She wasn't the one he betrayed. But another part." She trailed off, struggling to articulate the complex emotions. Sophia always had this capacity for seeing the fullness of people, both their failures and their potential for growth. "I've never been good at that." "You've guarded your heart," Olivia observed. "For good reason." "Maybe too well," Elena admitted. "My life in Seattle is contained, safe. I have colleagues I'm friendly with, but not close to. Dating relationships that never progress past a certain point. A beautiful apartment that sometimes feels more like a museum than a home." The confession surprised her. She hadn't intended to reveal so much. But something about Olivia invited confidence, a quality Sophia had possessed as well. "And now?" Olivia asked. "Being back in Maplewood, discovering your birth mother, running into Michael. Does it make you want something different?" Before Elena could answer, the bell above the door jingled, announcing a customer. The moment for introspection passed as they turned their attention to business. But Olivia's question lingered in Elena's mind throughout the afternoon. Did she want something different? The orderly, predictable life she had constructed in Seattle suddenly seemed less like an achievement and more like a defensive fortification. She had built walls around her heart so high that even she couldn't see past them anymore. That evening, Elena sat on Sophia's porch swing, Carmen's journal open in her lap. She had reached an entry from when Carmen was 7 months pregnant. The baby moves constantly now, especially at night. I imagine she is practicing dance steps, preparing for a life of movement and joy. I hope the family who raises her will encourage this spirit, will let her run free under open skies and not constrain her to society's narrow expectations of proper girlhood. Mama says I should not think of the baby as she, that it creates too strong an attachment. But I know this child is a daughter. I feel it in my soul. And though I cannot keep her, cannot give her my name or raise her in our traditions, I can give her this, my love woven into every cell of her being, my prayers for her happiness, and someday perhaps the truth of her beginnings. I want her to know that she was conceived in love, brief though it was, that she was carried in joy, despite the difficulties, that she was given away not through rejection but through the most profound act of love I am capable of, putting her well-being above my desire to keep her. Will she understand this when she is grown? Or will she see only abandonment where I intended sacrifice? Elena closed the journal, tears blurring her vision. Carmen's fears had been prescient. Elena's first reaction had indeed been to feel abandoned, betrayed by this revelation of her true origins. But in Carmen's words, she was beginning to see something else. Courage, selflessness, a young woman's determination to give her child possibilities she couldn't provide herself. The medallion of Saint Elena seemed to warm against her skin, as if responding to this shift in understanding. Clarity Carmen had said it would bring. Perhaps this was the beginning of that clarity. Seeing beyond her own pain to recognize the love that had shaped her life, however complicated its expression. The following morning, Elena arrived at Cortez Collectibles to find Olivia already there, engaged in animated conversation with a middle-aged couple. As Elena entered, Olivia waved her over enthusiastically. Elena! Perfect timing. This is Barbara and Thomas Winters. They're looking for period-appropriate furnishings for their Victorian on Maple Street. The Harrington House? They're restoring it to its 1890s glory. Elena recognized the house, a magnificent queen and that had fallen into disrepair over the decades. That's quite an undertaking, she commented, shaking their hands. A labor of love, Barbara admitted. And sometimes just labor. But we're committed to doing it right, which is why Sophia was such a godsend. She had an encyclopedic knowledge of Victorian interiors. Elena has a background in archival preservation, Olivia interjected. She might have insights about maintaining the historical integrity while making the space livable for modern needs. Before Elena could protest that her expertise was in documents, not furniture, she found herself drawn into a detailed discussion about appropriate lighting fixtures, wallpaper patterns, and the merits of various wood species for flooring. To her surprise, opinions and knowledge she didn't realize she possessed began flowing freely. Memories of Sophia's lessons on Eastlake versus aesthetic movement, Richardson Romanesque versus High Victorian Gothic. An hour later, the Winters left with a detailed list of recommendations and a promise to return when Elena located some specific items she believed would complement their restoration. That was unexpected, Elena said as the door closed behind them. Olivia grinned. You were brilliant. Just like Sophia would have been. The way you explained. The comparison both pleased and unsettled Elena. She had spent 15 years deliberately distinguishing herself from Sophia, creating a separate identity untainted by Maplewood's painful associations. Now she found herself channeling her grandmother's expertise, continuing her legacy in ways she hadn't anticipated or intended. You don't have to look so alarmed, Olivia said with a gentle smile. Being like Sophia in some ways doesn't erase who you are. Elena rearranged a display of Art Deco vases, buying time to collect her thoughts. I spent so many years running from this place, from anything that connected me to Sophia. And now here I am, selling antiques and spouting wisdom about Victorian furniture, as if the last 15 years never happened. Or maybe, Olivia suggested, as if those 15 years were necessary for you to become the person who could return and appreciate what was valuable here all along. The observation struck Elena with unexpected force. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from Harrison's office. confirming their appointment to discuss the formal transfer of Sophia's estate later that week. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of customers and inventory management. Elena found herself increasingly comfortable in the rhythms of the store, enjoying the conversations with people who remembered her as a child and seemed genuinely pleased by her return to Maplewood. By closing time, she felt a curious sense of accomplishment, as if she had passed some test she hadn't known she was taking. As she locked the store's front door, a movement across the street caught her eye. Michael Davis stood on the corner, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. When their eyes met, he raised a hand in hesitant greeting. Elena's first instinct was to ignore him, to turn away and pretend she hadn't seen. But something, perhaps Carmen's medallion warm against her skin, perhaps Sophia's voice in her memory urging her toward difficult truths, made her return the gesture with a small nod. Michael seemed to take this as invitation enough. He crossed the street, approaching with careful steps that betrayed his uncertainty. "The store looks good," he said when he reached her. "Sophia would be pleased to see you running it." "It's temporary," Elena replied automatically, "just until I fulfill the terms of the will." Michael nodded, accepting this. "Still, it suits you." An awkward silence fell between them, 15 years of unspoken words creating a chasm wider than the sidewalk they stood on. "I've been thinking about what you said," Elena said finally. "About clearing the air." Hope flickered across his face. "Yes. I'm not ready to have coffee with you or pretend we're old friends catching up," she continued, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "But I think I'm ready to hear what you have to say. Not today, but soon." The relief in Michael's expression was palpable. "I'd appreciate that opportunity. Whenever you're ready." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card. "My number." "No pressure." Elena accepted the card, tucking it into her purse without looking at it. "Good night, Michael." "Good night, Elena." He started to turn away, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think Sophia would be proud of you. She always was, even when you weren't speaking." The words lingered in the air as he walked away, leaving Elena with a complicated tangle of emotions she wasn't quite ready to unravel. The following days established a pattern that became increasingly comfortable. Mornings with Carmen's journal, days at the store with Olivia, evenings exploring Sophia's house and discovering the layers of her grandmother's life she had missed during their years of estrangement. In a cedar chest in the attic, Elena found a collection of her childhood artwork, carefully preserved alongside report cards, school photographs, and newspaper clippings detailing her academic achievements. Sophia had tracked Elena's life with meticulous attention, creating a parallel narrative of the granddaughter who had cut her off but never stopped being loved. Among these mementos, Elena discovered a small leather-bound book with no title on its spine. Opening it, she found Sophia's handwriting, the entries dating back 15 years, beginning just after Elena had fled Maplewood. July 15, 2010. Elena has gone. Perhaps forever. I cannot blame her. The pain Michael inflicted was cruel beyond measure, and my attempts to shield her only made it worse. She believes I took his side, that I defended him when I urged forgiveness. She cannot see that holding on to such hatred will poison her far more than it will hurt him. But I cannot force understanding. I can only wait and hope and keep her room ready for the day she might return. I light a candle each night for Carmen, asking her to watch over the daughter she entrusted to us. I have failed in my promise to tell Elena the truth when she was ready. Now I fear she may never be ready, may never return to hear it. The greatest curse of age is witnessing the pain of those we love, and being powerless to heal it. Elena read entry after entry, tears streaming down her face as Sophia chronicled the years of separation. Her pride in Elena's professional accomplishments glimpsed through internet searches, her sadness at missing important milestones, her unwavering belief that someday Elena would return to Maplewood and make peace with her past. The most recent entry had been written just weeks before Sophia's death. April 3, 2025. Dr. Reynolds confirmed what I have suspected. The treatments are not working. Months, he says, not years. I have made my arrangements, set my affairs in order. One last act remains, to ensure Elena returns to Maplewood, to face what she has spent 15 years running from. Harrison thinks my condition is too harsh, but he does not understand what is at stake. Elena has built walls around her heart so high that she cannot see over them anymore. She has created a life of careful control, perfectly ordered and utterly safe. But a life without risk is a life half-lived. I pray she will forgive me this final manipulation. I pray she will find Carmen's journal and understand the love that brought her into this world. I pray she will confront Michael and release the poison his betrayal left in her heart. I pray she will discover that the true antiques worth preserving are not objects but connections, to place, to past, to people. Most of all, I pray she will find her way home, not to this house or this town, but to herself, to the Elena who existed before pain taught her to hide. The medallion waits with Michael. When she is ready, it will find her. My dearest Elena, if somehow you read these words after I am gone, forgive an old woman's meddling. It was always only ever done from love. Elena closed the journal, holding it against her heart as sobs racked her body. All these years, she had believed Sophia had chosen Michael's side, had dismissed her pain. Instead, her grandmother had understood with painful clarity exactly what that betrayal had cost Elena, and had spent 15 years hoping for a chance to help her heal from it. The next morning, Elena arrived at the store earlier than usual, determined to access the records Sophia must have kept about the shop's operations. If she was going to fulfill the terms of the will and run Cortez Collectibles properly for 3 months, she needed to understand its financial situation. In Sophia's small office at the back of the store, Elena found meticulously organized files, inventory records, sales reports, tax documents, all maintained with a precision that spoke of Sophia's deep commitment to the business. But it was a folder labeled Special Collections that caught Elena's attention. Inside were detailed records of items Sophia had tracked down for specific clients over the years, pieces with particular provenance or personal significance. Not just antiques, but objects that told stories, that connected people to their past. Elena was still reviewing these files when Olivia arrived, a tray of coffee balanced in one hand. "You're here early," Olivia observed, setting a cup on the desk for Elena. "I found Sophia's client files," Elena explained. "These special collections projects. They're incredible." She wasn't just selling antiques. She was reuniting people with pieces of their history. Olivia smiled. That was Sophia's passion. She believed objects held memories, connected generations. The commercial side of the business kept the lights on, but these special projects, they were what gave her purpose. Elena pointed to the most recent file. "The Morrison family silver? What's this about?" "Sophia's last big project," Olivia explained. James Morrison's grandparents lost everything in the Depression, including a sterling silver tea service that had been in their family for generations. Sophia tracked it through 6 owners across 3 states. She located it 2 weeks before she died but hadn't completed the purchase. "And now," Olivia shrugged, "I didn't know if you'd want to continue the project. It requires a significant outlay. The current owner knows its value to the Morrison family and has priced it accordingly." Elena considered the folder, thinking of Sophia's journal entries, her belief in the power of objects to connect people to their past, to heal breaches, to tell stories that couldn't be articulated in words. "Let's do it," she decided. "Let's complete Sophia's last project." Surprise and pleasure bloomed on Olivia's face. "Really? You're sure? Sophia would want us to finish what she started," Elena said, surprising herself with how right the decision felt. "Call the owner, see if we can negotiate. And let Mr. Morrison know we're going to fulfill Sophia's promise." The day unfolded with new purpose as they made arrangements for the Morrison silver, while handling the store's regular business. Elena found herself enjoying the challenge, drawing on her archival skills to trace the provenance of items customers brought in for appraisal, suggesting display arrangements that told visual stories about the object's histories. "You're good at this," Olivia commented as they closed the store that evening. "Really good." "I'm just applying what I know about archives and historical preservation," Elena demurred. "It's more than that," Olivia insisted. "You have Sophia's gift for seeing the stories behind things, for understanding why objects matter to people. It's not about the monetary value. It's about the emotional connection." The observation lingered with Elena as she drove home, Carmen's medallion warm against her skin, objects as connectors to the past, as carriers of meaning and memory. Wasn't that what had drawn her to archival work in the first place? The desire to preserve not just documents but the human experiences they represented? At Sophia's house, her house now, she reminded herself, Elena prepared a simple dinner and settled at the kitchen table with Carmen's journal. She had been reading chronologically, following Carmen's journey from the discovery of her pregnancy through her decision to place her child with the Cortez family. Tonight, she reached the entries written during Carmen's final days. The pain comes in waves now, less easily controlled by medication. The doctors speak in hushed tones outside my door, but I know what they are saying. Time grows short. I do not fear death. I have made my peace with what comes next. My only regret is that I will never see Elena grow, never know the woman she becomes. I must trust Isabella and Robert to raise her with love, to nurture the spirit I feel so strongly in her even now. I must trust Sophia to keep her connection to her Spanish heritage, to someday share the truth of her origins. Last night I dreamed of Elena as a woman grown. She stood at a crossroads, uncertain which path to take. I called to her, but she could not hear me. I could only watch as she hesitated, torn between the safe, familiar road and the one that led into unknown territory. I woke with tears on my face, knowing I will never be there to guide her through such moments. Yet perhaps in some way, through the blood we share, through the medallion I send with her, through the love I have poured into her forming self, I may yet influence her choices. If I could tell her one thing, it would be this: choose courage over comfort. Choose love over fear. The path of safety may protect you from pain, but it also shields you from joy. Risk your heart, Mihija. It is the only way to truly live. Elena closed the journal, Carmen's words resonating within her, like the toll of a bell. Choose courage over comfort. Choose love over fear. How long had she been choosing the opposite, retreating into the controlled safety of her Seattle life, protecting herself from potential pain at the cost of deeper connections? The realization was uncomfortable but clarifying. She had structured her entire adult life around avoiding the vulnerability that had led to such devastation when Michael betrayed her. In doing so, she had created exactly the half-lived existence Sophia had described in her journal, perfectly ordered and utterly safe, but lacking the richness that came with risk. The following morning, Elena woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since arriving in Maplewood. After breakfast, she called Harrison's office and requested to move up their appointment to that afternoon. Then she drove to Cortez Collectibles, arriving just as Olivia was unlocking the door. "I need to ask you something," Elena said without preamble. "And I need you to be completely honest." Olivia's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. "Always. Do you think I could do this? Run the store not just for 3 months but permanently? Is it financially viable? Would I be any good at it?" Surprise flashed across Olivia's face, followed quickly by thoughtful consideration. "Financially, yes. Sophia ran a solid business. It's not a fortune, but it's stable and profitable. As for whether you could do it," she smiled, "I've watched you this past week. You have instincts for this work that can't be taught. You connect with customers, understand what they're really looking for beyond just an object. And you have professional skills Sophia never had, your knowledge of preservation, documentation, research methods. With those combined," she shrugged, "you could take Cortez Collectibles to a whole new level." Elena absorbed this assessment, feeling something settle within her. "I have a meeting with Harrison this afternoon. I'm going to tell him I'm staying. In Maplewood? For good." "I don't know about for good," Elena admitted, "but for longer than 3 months. I'm going to take a leave of absence from my job in Seattle. See if this is really what I want." Olivia's smile widened. Sophia would be ecstatic. "That's part of why I'm doing it," Elena said. "But not all. I'm doing it for Carmen too, and for myself. It's time I stopped running from my past and started learning from it instead." The decision once made brought a surprising sense of peace. When Elena met with Harrison that afternoon, she informed him of her plans with confidence she wouldn't have believed possible a week earlier. "I can't say I'm surprised," the lawyer admitted. "Sophia was convinced you'd find your way back to Maplewood eventually. She said the store would call to you, that your Cortez blood would recognize where you belonged." Elena smiled at the phrasing. Sophia always did have a flair for the dramatic. "But I'm not committing forever, just committing to try. I've spent 15 years defining myself in opposition to this place. I think it's time I got to know it, and myself again. After finalizing the immediate legal arrangements, Elena drove to the high school. Classes were finished for the day, but the main office directed her to the music room, where Michael Davis was reviewing sheet music at the piano. He looked up as she entered, surprise and wariness crossing his face. "Elena." "I got your number," she said, stepping into the room. But this seemed like a conversation better had in person. Michael set aside his music, giving her his full attention.
"I'm listening."
Elena took a deep breath. 15 years ago, you broke my heart and shattered my trust. I left Maplewood believing I could outrun the pain you caused. I built a life designed to keep me safe from ever feeling that kind of betrayal again. She touched Carmen's medallion beneath her blouse. I'm learning that safety isn't the same as happiness. Michael's expression was solemn. I know nothing I can say will undo what I did. No, Elena agreed. It won't. But I'm tired of letting what you did define my life. I'm tired of being afraid to trust, to connect, to risk. She met his gaze directly. I don't want to be friends. I don't want to pretend the past didn't happen. But I am ready to hear what you have to say. To understand why you did what you did, and then to finally fully let it go. Relief and something like respect crossed Michael's face. That's more than I deserve. Probably, Elena acknowledged with the ghost of a smile. But it's what I need. Not for you, for me. They spoke for over an hour. Michael explaining the fear and immaturity that had led him to maintain relationships with two women simultaneously. Elena describing the devastating impact his betrayal had had on her ability to trust. There were no easy resolutions, no magical healing, but by the time Elena left the music room, she felt lighter, as if a burden she had carried for 15 years had begun to loosen its grip. Outside, the spring afternoon was giving way to evening, the air soft with the promise of summer. Elena walked to her car slowly, thinking of Carmen's words. Choose courage over comfort. Choose love over fear. For 15 years, she had chosen comfort and fear, building a life designed to protect her from pain. Now, standing in the town she had fled, surrounded by the past she had tried to escape, she found herself ready, perhaps for the first time since that devastating summer, to choose differently. Back at Sophia's house, her house, Elena prepared a simple dinner and carried it out to the porch swing. As twilight settled over Maplewood, she found herself thinking not of returning to Seattle but of possibilities she hadn't considered before. She could maintain her position at the Seattle Museum part-time, consulting on special projects while running Cortez Collectibles. She could use her professional expertise to create a more comprehensive cataloging system for the store's inventory, perhaps even develop a specialization in items with well-documented provenance. She could finally complete her long-delayed book on preserving family histories through object curation, something she had started years ago but never finished, as if subconsciously unwilling to explore the significance of family legacies. As darkness fell, Elena fingered Carmen's medallion, thinking of the three women whose lives had shaped her own. Carmen, who had loved her enough to let her go. Isabella, who had chosen her and raised her with unconditional devotion. And Sophia, who had connected her to her heritage even when Elena had rejected it. 3 months ago, Elena would have said she was defined by her career, her independence, her carefully constructed life in Seattle. Now, sitting on Sophia's porch in the town she had once called home, she understood that identity was far more complex. A tapestry woven from biology and choice, past actions and future possibilities, painful losses and unexpected discoveries. The space between echoes, that brief pause between sound and its return, was where truth resided. Sophia had known that. Carmen had intuited it. Now Elena was beginning to understand it too. She was not just the child Carmen had surrendered, or the daughter Isabella and Robert had raised, or the granddaughter Sophia had mentored. She was not just the woman Michael had betrayed, or the archivist who had built a career preserving other people's histories. She was all of these and more. A continuing story, not a completed archive. For the first time since arriving in Maplewood, Elena felt not just resignation to her situation but genuine curiosity about what might unfold. She had come seeking closure, an ending to the chapter Sophia had forced her to revisit. Instead, she was discovering the possibility of a new beginning. one that incorporated her past rather than rejecting it, that built upon her professional skills while honoring her personal heritage. 3 months to run Cortez Collectibles. 3 months to explore her newly discovered origins. 3 months to reconcile with the town she had fled and the memories she had buried. It wasn't much time to rebuild a life, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough. The bell above the door of Cortez Collectibles jingled as Elena finished arranging a display of Art Nouveau jewelry pieces. She looked up to see James Morrison entering, his wife and teenage daughter in tow. "Mr. Morrison," Elena greeted them warmly. "How nice to see you again. We couldn't pass through Maplewood without stopping by," he explained. "Melissa wanted to thank you personally for finding her grandmother's silver." The teenage girl stepped forward, her smile shy but genuine. "It meant everything to my grandfather to have it back before he passed. He told us stories about it every Thanksgiving dinner for as long as I can remember. Having the actual set there for his last holiday with us." She blinked back tears. "Thank you." Elena thought of Sophia, of her belief in the power of objects to connect generations, to heal breaches, to tell stories that couldn't be articulated in words. "Your grandfather's silver was my grandmother's last project," she explained. "I'm just glad we could complete it for both their sakes." After the Morrisons left, Elena returned to the office where Olivia was updating their online catalog. The business had evolved over the past 6 months, incorporating Elena's archival expertise into Sophia's traditional approach. They now specialized in items with well-documented provenance, offering authentication services and creating detailed historical records for significant pieces. "The Morrison silver was worth every penny we paid," Elena commented, sinking into the chair opposite Olivia. "Did you see that girl's face?" Olivia nodded. "Sophia would say that's the real value of what we do, not the monetary transaction but the emotional restoration." She'd be right. Elena touched the medallion that still hung around her neck. She had come to think of it as carrying the wisdom of 3 generations: Carmen's courage, Sophia's persistence, and her own emerging ability to integrate past and present. Her life had found a new rhythm: 4 days a week in Maplewood running the store, 3 days in Seattle maintaining her position at the museum on a part-time consulting basis. The arrangement satisfied both her professional ambitions and her newfound appreciation for the legacy Sophia had left her. Maplewood was no longer a place of painful memories to be avoided, but a community where she was gradually rebuilding connections. She had even had coffee with Michael once, not to rekindle anything romantic but to confirm that the past no longer held power over her future. "Oh, before I forget," Olivia said, interrupting Elena's thoughts. "That researcher from the Spanish Museum emailed again about Carmen's journal. He's very interested in her first-hand account of growing up during Franco's regime." Elena nodded thoughtfully. She had been corresponding with a historian in Madrid, who specialized in women's experiences during that period. Carmen's journal, with its vivid descriptions of daily life and political tensions, had historical significance beyond its personal meaning to Elena. "I'll digitize a few more pages tonight," she decided. "But I'm not ready to part with the physical journal yet." "Of course not," Olivia agreed. "But sharing the content, I think Carmen would approve. Her story deserves to be remembered, not just as your birth mother, but as a woman who lived through extraordinary times." Elena smiled, thinking of how her professional skills as an archivist had allowed her to honor Carmen's legacy in ways Sophia might never have imagined. "You're right. Stories are meant to be preserved but also shared." As the afternoon sunlight streamed through the store's front windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above a display of vintage globes, Elena felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her for most of her adult life. Not just to Maplewood or to Cortez Collectibles, but to the continuum of women whose choices had shaped her existence: Carmen's sacrifice, Isabella's nurturing, Sophia's preservation of heritage. She had spent 15 years running from her past, only to discover that embracing it was the key to moving forward. The space between echoes, between action and reflection, between loss and discovery, between the women she came from and the woman she was becoming, had indeed revealed its truth. Elena Cortez had come home, not to a place but to herself, to the fullness of an identity woven from both biology and choice, from pain transformed into wisdom, from the courage to risk her heart again. In the quiet of the shop, surrounded by objects that each held their own stories, Elena finally understood what Sophia had wanted her to learn: that the past was not something to be escaped but to be integrated, that identity was not fixed but fluid, that home was not a location but a state of being. Carmen's medallion warmed against her skin as the afternoon light caught it through her blouse. Saint Elena, bringer of clarity, keeper of stories, bridge between worlds. The clarity had come, not all at once but gradually, like dawn breaking over Maplewood's hills. Elena was not just the sum of what had happened to her but the author of what came next. Her story, like the precious antiques that surrounded her, had value not despite its complicated provenance but because of it. And like the best of Sophia's treasures, it was still unfolding, each day adding new dimensions to its worth.